Welcome one and all to the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast. Today is March 12th, and this is episode number 7.5, a red jacket that isn't quite metallic. My name is Tom, and I am desperately trying to figure out how to alchemically convert myself into the non-comedic host for this episode, as we are joined today by our special guest...
Hi, I'm Renata. I go by Suzu on the internet. I'm an avid anime and manga nerd, a writer, a merch seller, and resident Edward Elric fanboy. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. As you can tell, our regularly scheduled main host, Louie, decided to be a good family man and is spending time with his family this week. So Renata was kind enough to offer to join us, and we're going to be talking about a couple of different things. Unlike our normal episodes, today we're just going to be taking some time to chat with Renata, talk about and her interest in manga and things like that, as well as her Chosen 5 series. And then she is going to be taking us through her current and, I'm assuming, consistent favorite of FullMetal Alchemist.
Yeah.
So, Renata, I wanted to take a second, just because you're sort of new to the show, and you and I have actually never talked before today.
No, we haven't.
We both know a person who is related to us that we're not going to specifically explain because this is the internet and we don't want to be found out in real life.
Yeah.
But you have recently been studying abroad in Japan, but you've also been a big manga and anime, as you said, nerd, and just a thing that you enjoy. What is it about Japanese manga and things like that that really stands out to you, that really grabs you? What's the thing that makes you care about it so much?
That's an interesting question, because I get asked that a lot, and I'm never really sure how to answer it, because I think it's just the way that the stories are told. It just grips me in a way that a lot of other media doesn't really. The character dynamics, the way it's written, it's so unique and interesting. At least compared to most American media that I've been into, there's like such an emphasis on characters most of the time, and I really resonate with that.
Is that what you would say is the biggest difference between Japanese manga and things like that? And we're both American, so American pop culture type things?
Well, in my own experience, specifically with comics, American comics, for me, tend to be a little bit harder to keep up with. There tends to be a lot going on in them to the point where, like, it's confusing. My main experience with American comics is from, like, DC and Marvel, and there's so much going on in both of those universes that it's, like, hard for me to keep up with it a lot of the time, as much as I do enjoy them.
I know that's not going to be what we're going to be talking about, but is there a particular one that you do enjoy?
Jason Todd, Red Hood. He's my favorite. He's my favorite. He's my absolute favorite. He's one of the Robins. He's the second one. He's my favorite comic book character. I'm obsessed with him.
Okay, fair enough. It's unfortunate Louie's not here today, because that's like also the one that he keeps trying to get me to read. He's like, oh man, Red Hood is so good. I'm like, okay, sure. I
love Red Hood so much. I'll talk to Louie about it. I also really like Spider-Man. I'm a Spider-Man fan as well.
Spider-Man is... That's, like, to me, the perfect American superhero comic. It's just so over-the-top, crazy action, while also being this down-to-earth story.
Yeah.
The characters in it are so... I wouldn't say they're, like, exceptionally well-made. I mean, they are good, generally, but every character feels like, every time they come up, it's like, oh, Peter Parker feels like this kind of character that everyone can get behind and follow. So yeah.
He's just like, he's the guy who, like, no matter what, he always keeps getting back up, and there's just something, like, so compelling about that.
Yeah. Minor Spider-Man question. Do you prefer Spider-Man web shooters that's technology, or Spider-Man web shooters that's just coming out of his arm?
I prefer technology, because I think it's more fun when it's like he's making it himself.
Yes, I agree.
He's so committed to the spider theme that he has to make them himself.
He doesn't have to be a Spider-Man, but he has decided that is what he shall be.
Exactly.
Yes.
I just think it's cute, and I also think it's a really good way of demonstrating his, like, intelligence, because I think Peter Parker's intelligence is, like, a very important part of his character.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, there's actually a Spider-Man manga called Spider-Man Fake Red, which I read recently. It's very short, and it's about Peter Parker gets, like, he goes missing, and there's no Spider-Man, and this random Japanese teenager living in New York happens upon his costume, and he decides, I'm going to be Spider-Man until the original Spider-Man comes back. And it's good. Okay. It's actually really fun.
So speaking of that, although I think you've already sort of said it, Louie and I had a long talk about this, and I think it's an interesting thing. Where do you stand on digital versus physical books? I'll say my piece, which is I live in a small apartment with a full family, so I don't really have the room for the books anymore, and digital has gotten so much better now, but where do you fit on that?
I don't know if you've heard this from our mutual connection, but, but I have a pretty vast collection of physical manga volumes, both in English and in Japanese.
Very nice.
I have a lot of Japanese ones because they help me practice my language.
Oh, good.
So that's why I have those. I have some in front of me right now, actually. And I have a bunch in English, but my general philosophy with buying manga is that I only buy series that I've already read and know that I like, because I don't want to waste money on a series that I end up not liking, and then I have to either have it or sell it, and you always lose money doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I like collecting manga. Recently, I reread Noragami from start to finish because the last volume just released physically, and I finally had it. And I hadn't read all of it. I just read most of it. So I sat down and read the entire manga start to finish physically. And it made me realize how much I miss like holding a physical book in my hand and reading a manga.
Yeah, it is really nice.
It's like a nice feeling.
I don't get physical anymore, but I still have some. And my brother gave me a couple over Christmas, and I've been pulling out some of my old ones and reading through them. And it's just as nice as you can get the picture to be, and as nice. I have this full-size e-reader that I use that I love now, and I read on it all the time, but the physical book it's just a nice
different.
Like
I've been reading Witch Hat Atelier, and I couldn't start reading it, and then I bought like the first 4 volumes because a friend of mine has been like incessantly recommending it to me. Like literally she has been like nonstop, like you have to read it. So I like bought the first 4 volumes, and I sat down and I read them, and then I tried to go online, and I like for some reason just couldn't. So I bought the rest of the books, and I've like been reading them like one after the other, and it's it's just so completely different.
Yeah.
Like I can read like 10 of them in one sitting, but I can't read it online for some reason.
Okay. Yeah.
Digital is good for reading like week to week. Like Dandadan is releasing like now, it's coming out every week. So I read that digitally, and every time a chapter drops on like the Shonen Jump app, I'm there. It's like every Monday I'm like, new Dandadan chapter, let's go.
We're gonna fit in pretty well around here. That comes up like every other week. Yeah, Dandadan is fantastic.
It's
and
so good.
I agree that just reading off the internet, reading on your computer just doesn't work. That's why that e-reader has been such a godsend.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, my eyes don't hurt all day.
Yeah. I got glasses recently because my eyes were hurting all the time.
One last thing I wanted to ask you about before we get into our next thing here, but there is something you mentioned, which is another thing that is the reason why we are aware of each other's existence, thanks to our mutual acquaintance, who shall not be named, who I think I'm going to just play this part of the clip so that she can know that she is the mutual acquaintance who shall not be named. But you have been abroad recently. While you're in university, you went to Japan, I believe, for a whole year?
Yeah, I was there for a whole year.
So I hope it was fun. I hope it was good.
It was so much fun. Thank you.
Oh, good. That's what I've heard. I got to do it too when I was in college, and I've lived there too, so I love it there. But I wanted to ask, you were obviously a big enjoyer of manga and things like that before you went to Japan. Do you think how you feel about it has changed having lived in Japan, or is there something that you've come to understand about it or come to think about it that changed because you spent so much time in Japan?
I feel like I haven't changed how I feel about manga, like generally speaking. I think I love it just as much, if not more, as when I first went there. I think the thing I realized more while I was there is just that how common it is there. When I was living there while Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 was airing.
Okay.
Which Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 was like a huge deal. It was probably the #1 anime in the world, and I think it might still be.
It's up there, yeah.
Yeah, it's
kinda
it's pretty popular. And while I was there, it was like, I'm a big fan of Jujutsu Kaisen. I really enjoy it. I know not everyone loves it, but I do. So while I was there, it was like constant. There was like event after event after event after event. Like convenience stores had like collaborations. Mm-hmm. Like I would buy like 3 Kit Kat bars, and they would give me like a clear file that had like a Jujutsu Kaisen character on it.
Oh my goodness, that's right. Yeah. I forgot about that. Oh, good, they still do that.
And they did them with stickers too. They had stickers. They did one
Oh,
for
wow.
Windbreaker as well. Like a bunch of shows that I like enjoy and have no one has ever heard of here. Like Windbreaker is a manga and anime that I really like. It's like a delinquent manga. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't know if I have, but I might have seen like the cover or something.
Yeah, it's a delinquent manga about like some
Okay.
boys who like are the protectors of their town. It's cute. I like it. It's fun.
Mhm.
There's no good delinquent manga anymore. But that one is good.
Now that I see it, I've seen this before, but I haven't read it. But okay, yeah.
I like that manga a lot. And the anime was airing while I was there, and there was like collaborations everywhere. Here in America, you'll see like Jujutsu Kaisen stuff around, you'll see My Hero stuff around, but you would never see like Windbreaker stuff around. But it was everywhere while I was there. So it was just kind of a realization of like how big anime is in Japan. Like I kind of like, I knew it, but I didn't know it until I saw it for myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and I 100% agree. It's that, oh yeah, it's everywhere, but you think about it like, oh yeah, Marvel movies are everywhere. But it's like, no.
No, it's like, it's everywhere.
It's literally everywhere.
Yeah. Like I went to Ikebukuro on a trip because I
nice.
wanted to go to Ikebukuro because it's where Durarara takes place, and Durarara was one of my favorite anime when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, I have to go to this place where this anime I love takes place. And all the vending machines had like Durarara characters on them. And I was like, this is so weird.
Yeah.
Like it's cool. It's really cool, but it was weird. Yeah, they would never do that here. Like never.
Yeah, like you might find one, and it might be like at a shop,
it'd be like a special thing of like, this is the Marvel vending machine, but like every vending machine had at least one Durarara character on it, if not multiple. Like they were advertising like, this is the place where this anime happened, which is fine because it's a great show, but it was weird. It was a little weird.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like, because we think about it here and it's like, oh yeah, it'll like, oh yeah, you'll see something like that for like a Marvel movie. It's like, but it's not just Marvel. Imagine if it's
like
every single
show.
movie, every place has something. You'll go to the next place and they're doing a different one, but it's something completely different.
And it's not even like just the most popular shows that have these like
not at all
collaborations. It's like every show has some kind of cafe collaboration or Konbini collaboration or something.
Oh, the Konbini collaborations.
While I was there, I went to like Tower Records, and they were having like an Iruma-kun collaboration. I was like, I've never heard of this show. I don't know what this is. It's awesome. So interesting.
That's great. Well,
yeah. I also went to the
I had one other thing that I wanted to ask you.
So that was fun.
Wait, you went to what?
I went to the Jujutsu Kaisen cafe in Osaka on like the last day. It was amazing.
All right, no, you need to tell us about this. we're stopping everything. I will go 100%. I am not a huge Jujutsu Kaisen fan. I'm starting to finally get it on book 6, but no, this is a Jujutsu Kaisen cafe. Tell me about this. This I need to know about.
Well, it was like a limited time one. They like have a few every year at this point because it's so popular. I went to the Shibuya incident one. Oh, I think I went in 2023. So I went in like October. I went at like the end of October, I think, in 2023.
Okay.
It was in Osaka. It was like right next to Osaka Station because I was living in Kyoto, so I couldn't go to the Tokyo one.
Okay.
But Osaka was like a 30-minute train ride, so I went to that one.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. The food was delicious. They had I had the Gojo meal because I'm a Gojo fan.
Okay, fair enough.
I like Gojo a lot. If you could see my room, there's a lot of Gojo around me. I've become known in my area as the one with the Gojo backpack because my backpack is covered in Gojo pins. Like literally, my backpack is entirely Gojo themed. It's kind of crazy. So they had like a Gojo themed tiramisu, which had like the box from season 2, and you like take it off, and it was like Oreo flavored. It was delicious. It was so good.
Oh, that sounds so good. That actually
sounds really good. They had a Sukuna parfait, which was like the Fuga parfait and it was like raspberry sorbet and like all this frozen fruit. It was delicious.
I'm trying to think of how you would make a Sukuna parfait and not just have like fake fingers sticking all out of it.
Well, the Yuji meal, my friend had the Yuji meal when we went, and it literally was like a bunch of hot dogs that were cut to look like fingers. And it was so weird. It was delicious according to her, but it was weird. It was a little weird. And then my other friend had the Nanami waffles, which were like caramelized banana waffles.
Ooh, That would
Yeah.
be so good.
And then I also had the gojo drink, because of course I did.
Well, yeah, of course.
And
sure.
it was like blue lemonade. It was so good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
You know, I sat, like, they had little characters on every table, so I sat at a gojo table. And they give you, like, a free little mini art board when you, like, for every reservation you make. So it was, like, because it was me and two friends, we each got one. So one of my friends got Yuji, the other friend got Ghetto with the scar on his face. I won't spoil it if you since you're not up to that part yet.
Okay.
And then I got the gojo one, so I was, like, so happy. It's, like, in a prominent place in my room. Like,
oh, yeah, no.
One of my prized possessions.
I know exactly what the kind of thing you're talking about. When I was there, I didn't do anything like that, but, like, one of my favorite things is I got to go to a museum exhibit. Do you know Vagabond?
Yeah. I really like Vagabond, actually.
So I thought it was the end, but apparently the series still hasn't ended. But
yeah, it's on hiatus.
Yeah, there was a museum exhibition of, like, what was one of, like, the last chapters, and, like, they took over this little tiny museum.
Oh, wow.
And you would physically walk through it. The floors and the walls were decorated to be like the panels of the comic that were on the wall. And I have, like, right next to me on the bookcase, like, one of my favorite things is I have the Inoue art book from that museum of
You'll
just
have to give
like
me
all
like an office tour later.
Oh, I have no pictures of it. Like, I didn't take any pictures of it, but there was, like, one point where it's supposed to be like he's in a Zen garden, and it's the whole floor of this 20-foot by 30-foot room has just been covered in sand and, like, carefully raked to look like that, and there's little stepping stones for you to walk along as you follow along through the path.
That's
it was the coolest thing. Yeah.
Oh my god. I went to, like, a Death Note exhibition that was, like, similar, but it wasn't that high effort.
This was, like, a temporary thing, and it was at this little tiny museum. Like, I say museum, and, like, in the US, like,
it was like a little exhibit, right?
It was like 10, 12 rooms.
Yeah.
Like, in another museum, that museum would have just been an exhibit hall for some bigger museum, but this was the whole building.
Oh, wow.
It was just this little, like, square building, like, in a park for, like, 3 months while I was there. They did a Vagabond exhibit of, like, this one chapter that they had designed and set up for all of this. And it was
that's crazy. That's so cool.
It's just this crazy thing that they did. I'm like, oh, man.
I would have gone to see that if that had been there while I was there.
I think, like you, I found out about it, like, 4 days before it ended and got there on, like, the last day. Oh, it was so fun.
Yeah.
Now, before we get completely distracted talking about all our crazy adventures, which we could just make the rest of the show about, but I am going to try and be the responsible person that I usually don't have to be, because Louie is here to do all of that. There's something I wanted to ask that we're only going to get this one episode to really talk to you for now, maybe in the future, was a list of 5 series, your choice what and why, but 5 series that you think give a sense of the kind of manga that you like, the kind of person that you are in terms of a fan of these sorts of things. And yeah, I wanted to hand that off to you. Like, what is your 5 series that sort of you gravitate to, that you go, like, this is the series that I love?
Okay, so number 1, we talked about this briefly in that you don't like this series, but my number 1 is Chainsaw Man.
Yes. I have no issue with that. Like, good for you. I'm glad you like it. Mutual person who we won't be specifically naming has told me a lot about how much you like this series.
Yeah,
I'm glad you like it.
I made her watch it with me.
Yep, she's told me that too.
Yeah, she doesn't want to admit that she liked it, but she definitely liked it.
I will agree. She has not admitted that she liked it at all. At least to me, but no judgment here. Like, you like it, that's great.
Yeah. It's my favorite manga. It has been for a while, and I first read it during COVID, like during quarantine. So like 2020 or 2021. Mm-hmm. I read the whole of part 1. I read all, it's like 97 chapters. I read all of it in one night. I stayed up till 4 a.m. Reading it. And then the next day, my mental health for the rest of the week was completely trashed, because that manga is messed up. It's messed up. It's very depressing. Yeah. It's very bleak. Yep. It's rough. But it gave me, like, such an intense emotional reaction that I hadn't had to anything in a while, that it, like, instantly became a favorite. Like, instantly. I love stories that make me sad.
As someone who has that same sort of feeling, like I know exactly what you mean, and okay, yeah, that
I love stories
actually
that make
makes
me
me
feel
want to see
things.
more of it. Then,
Yeah, it's like it takes a bit to get going, I think. Like the first like 2 volumes, because I read like the first volume when it came out physically. Like I bought it
Yep.
and read it, and I was like didn't really vibe with it. And I read the first chapter when it first came out on like Shonen Jump, like at the very beginning, and I was
Okay.
like, this doesn't vibe. I don't vibe with this. I don't like it. And then I tried it again, and then I tried it again when I had volume 2, and then after I read both volume 1 and 2 like together, I like was obsessed with it, and then I read the entire thing.
okay,
So it's like, it's definitely like, it might take a little bit of effort to get into it, but I think it's worth it. It's rough. It's rough. It is a rough series. It's very painful to read. I just am rooting so hard for Denji. Like, please, like, let this child be happy. I'm begging you. He is not allowed to be happy. It's crazy.
okay.
Yeah, and Fujimoto, the author Fujimoto, Fujimoto Tatsuki,
Yep.
he also did Look Back, which got a movie last year. Got a movie recently.
Right. He also did Look Back. Yeah, he did
Yeah.
Look Back and Goodbye Eri as well.
Yeah, which are two, like, Goodbye Eri is fucking fantastic. It made me cry. It makes me cry every time I read it. Look Back also makes me cry, frankly, every time I read it. And the movie was perfect. Like, I have no complaints about the Look Back movie. I hope they make a Goodbye Eri movie as soon as possible. I really, really hope they do. But
Okay.
yeah, I think Fujimoto is just such an interesting person to me that I kind of live and die by his recommendations now. Like, he has a list of, like, manga that he recommends, because a lot of people who were his assistants have gone on to make manga that are really, really popular and really famous. For example,
Yes.
Dandadan.
Yep, I was gonna say.
Dandadan was a Fujimoto assistant.
Yep.
Spy Family was a Fujimoto assistant. Kaiju number 8 was a Fujimoto assistant. Hell's Paradise was also a Fujimoto assistant.
That's the one.
So he has like all of these amazing series, or all of these series that are good at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
I like all of those series, and all of them are made by like people who studied under him, and I think that's like, he's crazy. He's had such a huge impact on modern Shonen Jump.
Yes.
And I'm a huge Shonen Jump nerd, so
No, I definitely agree with that. And like, I've been kind of the opposite, where it's like, oh man, this person worked under Fujimoto, and it's like, oh, I'll probably really like it. But when I actually read his stuff, it's like, although
Yeah.
Goodbye Eri,
so good. Oh my god.
I have like 1 or 2 problems with it, but compared to like volume 1.5 of Chainsaw Man, which is basically all I've read so far,
Yeah.
miles and miles better. I love it so much.
Yeah.
There's like a couple of things that's like, no, but like, that's me as like English lit brain of like, no,
Yeah,
it
that's
can't
valid.
be perfect. It can't be perfect. It's not Saikano. It can't be perfect. So what's your number 2?
And my number 2, saving FMA for later so that we can have a transition.
The segue.
Pandora Hearts probably would be my number
Pandora
2.
Hearts.
Pandora Hearts is like, it's older. It's from like 2006, I think, is when the manga first started. There is an anime. It sucks. Don't watch it.
Okay.
The anime is bad. The manga is so fucking good. It's like crazy.
It's another, I've seen this cover before, but yeah, I know nothing about this.
She also wrote
Okay.
she also wrote Vanitas no Cart, which is like has had a more recent anime adaptation and is still publishing, but Pandora Hearts has been over for a while. I've read Pandora Hearts all the way through twice. I own all of it physically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so beautiful. I don't know how to like describe the story without spoiling it. First of all, the art is gorgeous. Mochizuki Jun is like a fucking amazing artist. Her character designs are beautiful. She draws like all the official art she draws, it's like in color, and the colors are so bright and vibrant and interesting. The outfits she draws are like crazy detailed, and they're very like they have such a unique, interesting style to them. The way she writes characters is just so empathetic and like beautiful and lovely. And just like the story is so interesting and has so much going on, but it never feels hard to follow. And I love it so much. I'm crazy about it. It has a lot of Alice in Wonderland references, which is fun.
Okay.
I actually wrote a paper on... I was taking a Korean cinema class, and I was writing a paper on this movie called A Tale of Two Sisters. And in that movie, there's like a trend of like a twist happens, and then there's an untwist, and then it twists again. And my comparison was that I talked about a part in Pandora Hearts that I'm going to do my fucking best not to spoil. Where there's a character, there's like these murders going on. and no one
Mhm.
knows who the culprit is. We're trying to figure out who the culprit is, and this has like been a lot of the plot up until this point.
Okay.
So then there's a reveal that this character, who I will not name, but is a very beloved character to me and to the whole Pandora Hearts fandom, what little of it still exists. So it's like this character, there's a twist that he's the killer, and then there's an untwist because he doesn't have the like distinctive mark that the killer would have. And then it retwists when later we find out he does have the mark, and we just couldn't see it before. And it's like, it sounds kind of silly when you say it like that, but in practice, it's so like emotional and devastating, and then like what happens after as a result of it is like crazy, and then like the character arcs that happen as a result of this reveal are amazing. It recontextualizes everything you've learned about this character and other characters up until this point, and it's like it's just so cool. It's so good. I love it so much. I'm such a nerd about Mochijun's writing. Her writing is so good. I'm not caught up on Vanitas because Vanitas is the manga she has that's publishing right now. That one's about vampires. I also, it's fun. It's good. I've read some of it. I need to catch up on it. I'm just behind because I want to wait until there's a bunch of it that I can just read all at once.
Yeah.
But Pandora Hearts is so good. Please, people need to read it. People need to read it.
Okay, I'm writing it down. Writing it down as we go.
My friend got me into it, and I've literally never met another person outside of like that one friend who has read it. It's very unfortunate.
Okay. It does sound really interesting, yes. And
it's so good.
It's like I said, I feel like I've seen this cover art before.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it's a weird blend of like obscure and classic.
Yeah.
Where it's like a lot of people know of it, but not a ton of people have read it.
Oh yeah, I saw this on the bookshelf when I was looking for something else, and it's there, and I saw it.
But I didn't read it.
But I was looking for something else.
Yeah, it's so good. I love it so much. I have all of it, physically. And I've reread my physical volumes a few times, so...
Your series that isn't super popular anymore is still re-released digitally, unlike the Mikey series.
Yeah, it did make me cry at the end as well. Again, I like series that make me sad, so...
I mean, like, I'm reading through Eden Zero right now.
Oh, yeah. Is that the Fairy Tail spinoff?
Yeah, it's from the guy who did Fairy Tail. It's extremely good.
Hot take, but unlike Fairy Tail.
I can't speak to that. I haven't read any of it. I just own...
I tried.
35 books of it.
I tried so hard to read Fairy Tail, I could not get into it.
Eden Zero, to give you the short of how I would recommend it, it is very good, but you have to get past book 1. You have to get into book 2.
Yeah.
Book 1 I think is still fantastic, but book 1 ends on a cliffhanger.
Oh,
book
yeah,
2 jumps back in and completely ignores the entire cliffhanger. But like, once you get to like book 2 and 3, Eden Zero is full of all these like plot mysteries and weird things that are going on, and it takes them a couple books before things start connecting. And looking at it now that I've read 30 volumes of it, there's so much in this series that's like all interconnected. It's amazing.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's fun, goofy, the art's great, it's a fun little battle manga. Like, all that's good too, but that's the thing where it's like, oh, yeah, this character is connected to that character, is connected to this one, and they were all here at this time, in this chapter, 6 books before any of this was talked about, because that's how foil I've been planning this.
Yeah.
It's like 2 steps down from like Death Note level.
Yeah.
Like everything is plotted out and everything's interconnected.
Yeah.
It's just more Shonen power of friendship will save the day, along with punching people in the face. If you want to somehow cram those 2 things together, yeah.
Good to know. That's interesting.
So number 3.
Number 3. Okay. This is more the anime than the manga. I've read some of the manga, but I've not read it as much. But Hunter x Hunter. I feel like that's... Oh, I think I would preface this with Hunter x Hunter and Yu Yu Hakusho.
Oh, yes.
Both of those.
Yeah.
They're by the same author. People tend to associate them with each other, as do I. The anime are both in my top 10. I'm a huge fan. I tried to get our mutual acquaintance to watch the live action Yu Yu Hakusho with me, but she was not having
it. Yeah, I have personal problems with watching any like live action.
I normally
stuff.
don't bother with them, but I heard good things about it, so I watched the first couple episodes, and I actually thought it was like it was good as far as live action anime adaptations go.
And
it was
yeah,
fun.
And that's my entirety of it. Of like, yeah, it was good for live action adaptation.
I liked the guy who played Yusuke. I thought he did a good job.
That's fine.
He was fun. I had fun with it, and that's what matters.
Fair enough. You are correct. Yeah. You had fun. That's great.
Hunter x Hunter has been is probably my number one anime and has been for a while. Again, because it made me sad. Because it made me cry. But also because I really like shonen. I'm a big Shonen Jump nerd. And Hunter x Hunter is, in my mind, like a complete deconstruction of what shonen is. Of like what the shonen battle anime is. And I think that it does it so well that it's so like interesting to watch this story that you think is going to go this way and then it completely swerves the other direction. And I heard someone I know and I were talking about Hunter x Hunter, and they said that the protagonist, Gon, and then his best friend is Killua, and they were saying, like, Gon is a bad person raised by good people, and Killua is a good person raised by bad people. And I was like, that's such a wonderfully interesting way to look at these characters. And it's so accurate. The way that these characters were raised has, like, influenced them and brought something out of them. But then when they're together, it's like their true natures come out in a way that's really, like, fascinating. And and they're also, like, they're just kids. They're very likable kids. Like, they're kids. They're 12 years old. They're children. They're adorable. And they go through this horrific shit. And it's like, it's also such, it's like, like the same thing with Chainsaw Man, where, like, Chainsaw Man is a commentary on the shit that kids get put through, both in real life and in manga. Hunter x Hunter is like that, too, where it's like these 12-year-olds are being forced to, like, carry the burden of, like, adult problems. And it's like, they're 12. They shouldn't be in this situation. And, like, the adults even acknowledge that. But, like, they're still there, and they're still traumatized from it. I wrote a paper on that, too. I wrote a paper on how, like, shonen has evolved in the direction of, like, the kids are not all right, as opposed to, like, we're having a fun adventure. It's, like, become more like the kids are suffering from the weight of adult problems. Yeah. Specifically with Chainsaw Man and Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, those are the two, I think, that, like, really exemplify that trend.
Okay.
Yeah, but Hunter x Hunter also does, because it's like, the adults even acknowledge, they're like, we should not have these 12-year-olds here, but they're here.
It is a little weird how they're, like, 12,
Yeah.
But it's like, no, they're surviving these things that are killing dozens of other people. I was like, well, I guess they're passing the exam, so here you go.
And my Hunter x Hunter hot take is that my favorite arc is not the Chimera Ant arc, it's actually the Yorknu City arc. The Kurapika arc. That's a hot take because everyone loves the Chimera Ant arc. And they're right, too. It's a good arc. I just don't like it as much as I like the Yorknu City arc.
Okay.
If you haven't read Hunter x Hunter, you won't understand that.
I have, but I read it 10, 12 years ago, and I haven't read it since. And it was great, and I loved every bit about it. And I remember almost nothing from it.
Yeah, it's like, it goes on hiatus all the time.
Yeah.
I think it's on hiatus right now, actually.
I think it just came off hiatus again. Oh. Unless it then just went back on hiatus
I'm just, like, waiting for them to continue the anime. It won't happen for a while, but hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And then Yu Yu Hakusho, also great. I feel like
Yu Yu Hakusho is classic.
It's not even trying to be anything different. It's just, like, a really solid, well-done battle shonen, and I really enjoy it. I like it a lot.
Yeah. What more? Have you read the manga for Yu Yu Hakusho?
I've read some of it. I think that the anime cuts out a lot of the stuff that is, like, at the beginning, I think.
Yes, it does. It cuts the first two books almost entirely.
Because because it's like I think Togashi, like, changed his mind about what he wanted the series to be, so they kind of, like,
that's
cut
exactly
out
what he did.
stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot about it for having not read it.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was asking about. Is like, what did you think of that? Because I have not watched all of it and I've not read all of it, but I adore Yu Yu Hakusho. The anime, the manga, both of them are fantastic, and where it ended up going was great.
Yeah.
But then there's those first two books. It's weird.
I think it's fine.
But I like it.
I mean, I guess we're going to get into this with FullMetal Alchemist, but I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily for the anime to change stuff if they think it will make the story more palatable or, like, more easy to consume, I guess. Chainsaw Man actually did the same thing. They cut one of the fights in, like, volume 1 or 2 from the anime because it kind of interrupted the flow even in the manga, so they just didn't bother with it. And it's my favorite manga, and I didn't even notice.
Yeah, the times when it happens that I really like it is when, like the series we'll talk about in a few minutes, and also Yu Yu Hakusho, where we're changing this to either bring the anime to a close or we want to do something with this and we want the anime to be done.
Yeah.
Like, the manga's still going, the series is still going. Go enjoy that if you want to see what happens in the main story, but we're going to bring it to a different end and end it.
Exactly. I think Yu Yu Hakusho and also Hunter x Hunter does this. in the 2011 version of the anime, they like cut out manga chapters that they didn't think they needed to bother with. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I understand why some people are against it, but I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing if it makes the series easier for people to get into.
Yeah.
Like, some things that work in manga just won't work in anime, and I think that it's understandable and fine to change things to fit that.
I agree.
So my number 4, it's totally not in line with the others, but Dr. Stone.
That's Stone. Not that out of line.
It's not, because it's still shonen, but it's not a battle shonen, and it has nothing to do with fighting, like, at all.
Yeah, like, if you had said, like, Drops of God, or...
I was considering saying Hikaru ga Shinda Natsu, or The Summer Hikaru Died, which is like a BL manga that I really like, which I also wrote a paper about.
That's fine.
But I mean, I was just thinking of like a series that's impacted me more, and it's like Dr. Stone has impacted me more overall, because I spent so long being obsessed with Dr. Stone. It was kind of crazy. Like, I was obsessed with it before the anime came out. I bought the first volume at a comic book store. I read it. I joined a Dr. Stone Discord server, and that was kind of it.
Okay.
I had such a long, intense obsession with it.
Mm-hmm.
It really helped me, like, evolve as a writer, I guess, because I got a lot of practice by playing around with Dr. Stone characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of problems with the way the manga ended up going. I have some problems with it. I generally think, I think it's a good manga overall. I think the ending is really solid. I don't think it's a bad story. I think I just have disagreements with the author's, like, moral philosophy to an extent. It makes it's like a weird thing to say, but, like, the way that the protagonist is portrayed is, like, very naive to me, which I don't think is a bad thing necessarily. Like, it's a valid character flaw for a character to have. Is that he's a very naive person who is very quick to trust even people who have stabbed him in the back, and he's very quick to forgive.
Yeah.
My problem with it is that he does this, like, time after time with villains. Like, villains stab him in the back, he forgives them, he lets them free, and then they end up helping him. But every single time it happens, he is never proven wrong. It never comes back to bite him in the ass. It's just such an aggressively optimistic series. And I don't think that's, like, always a bad thing. It's just that, to an extent, it gets unrealistic. All these characters who have conflicting ideals and previously were willing to kill people for them, suddenly they're like, now that you made ice cream for me, I'm okay with you. It's a little weird.
Yeah, the plot is just like, this is what's going to happen now, and we've just decided that this is going to work. Or what do they call it in Naruto? What is it, like, talk no jutsu?
Yeah,
it's like, oh, the main character talked to them.
Except in Dr. Stone, it's science no jutsu. Yeah, but I also, like, when I was younger, I was a huge science nerd, so I enjoy that aspect of Dr. Stone as well. I really like the characters. I think they're really fun. They bounce off each other well. The funny thing is that the main character, Senku, is, like, he is against romance. He refuses. Every female character in this show, at one point or another, is, like, throwing herself at him, and he's like, get away from me, I want science. For real, like, he meets, like, who is definitely the best girl of the series, Kohaku. He meets her in, like, volume 3. She throws herself at him, and she's like, I think I'm in love with you. And he's like, get off of me, I want to do science.
Yeah, from what little I've read the first book, and it's like, yep, so he is exactly what he is. Perfect.
Yeah, it's great. I love him so much. It's so funny because despite that, he has better romantic chemistry with, like, the entirety of his supporting cast than, like, 99% of harem protagonists.
Yeah.
Like, because he's just a genuinely, like, nice person. I think the interesting thing about, like, Senku as a character, and what really, like, hooked me on Dr. Stone, is that he's kind of like the anti-Light Yagami. Light Yagami is this, like, sociopath who's pretending to be a normal person, right?
Right.
So he's pretending to have empathy, but he, like, deeply lacks it in, like, every aspect. Well, like, Senku pretends to be a mad genius who lacks empathy. Underneath that, he's actually, like, a deeply empathetic, completely normal human being. He, like, plays it off as, like, oh, I'm just doing it for scientific progress. You know he's not. He really cares about these people. He loves them. He wants them to be happy. He wants to take care of them. You see it in, like, the way his expressions are drawn. The art is amazing. Boichi's a fantastic artist. Fun fact, he was the first author who is not Japanese to have his own manga in Shonen Jump.
Really?
Yeah, he's Korean. I actually went to a panel at a con a few years ago that he and the writer of Dr. Stone were at. And I heard them talk about how Boichi is the first non-Japanese man to have his own manga in Shonen Jump, which is really cool.
Oh, right. This is an author-artist one.
Yeah. But he also has his own series that is like just him.
Yeah, Origin.
Yeah, he's a fantastic artist. He draws expressions beautifully. The way he draws men's bodies is hilarious. It's really funny because he draws men in like such beauty, like chiseled, like gorgeous figures, and then he cannot draw women to save his life. It's hilarious. So I'm like, Bochi, you have something going on there? Is there like a reason for that? But
he's not the worst at drawing female characters, at least from what I remember in the first book.
It's just funny.
There's some others where it's like, yeah.
It's amusing. But yeah, the way he draws like characters' expressions is so like beautiful and so communicative. Like just the way he draws like Senku after he finds out about a thing that happened that I will not say due to spoilers.
Okay.
You see like every emotion that he's feeling on his face. It tells you everything about this character and how he's feeling in that moment. And it's like, he's the anti-Light Yagami because he feels so much, but he just doesn't want to express it. Well, Yagami feels nothing and he desperately wants to appear normal.
No, I think that's a good way to put it.
Death Note is also a good series. I like Death Note too.
Death Note, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of this thing, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
No one's ever heard of Death Note before, ever actually.
No. No. Thank God for that Netflix series. That totally was worth everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I actually haven't seen it, so I have no idea.
Oh, the Netflix movie sucks. It sucks. It's bad. It's not
Perfect.
good. Don't watch
I'm not going to watch it anyway. Yeah. Death Note. I gotta finish that.
Oh, it's amazing. I reread the manga recently and I loved it.
I got past the good part.
Oh, after like L. Yeah.
Yeah, the first major thing, and then when it started the next one, I'm like, yeah, I'll get to this someday.
It's not as good after that, but I'd say it's still worth reading.
No. It probably is. It's not something that I've ever thought to myself, like, I don't want to read this. I got to that point at a time when I think I was moving, so I didn't really want to buy more series at the time. Yeah. And it's like, I'll get back to this.
Again, I have all of Death Note physically. I have the whole thing in physical volumes.
Oh, my brother does too, and he's like, I think I've like seen coupons. I'm like, I can get the whole thing digitally for like $10. Like, maybe I'll just buy it all again. Why not? And then I'll have it because the first half of it is amazing.
It's so good.
I mean, the first book of it has some of the best twists.
Yeah.
In the series.
The funniest thing about Death Note to me is that, like, as I was reading it, I was like, okay, so the author is making a commentary about how Light hates women and how he's misogynistic. And then I read the author's other manga, and I was like, oh, no, this author just hates women. He's just a misogynist. Like, he's just as like that.
Yeah.
I don't think it diminishes the value of Death Note's commentary, but I think it is something to consider.
I haven't read any of his other stuff. I definitely get that feeling from Death Note.
Yeah.
But I feel like in Death Note, you could at least cover it up and say it's like,
it's because Light
is an asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing, but that's because it's Light who's doing this, and he's a sociopathic killer. Yeah. You don't have to think about it, but it's all okay. So if it's in the other ones, yeah, maybe that would be a problem.
Yeah. The same author-artist duo did Bakuman, which is like a Shonen Jump manga written by two guys about two guys who write a Shonen Jump manga.
Yeah. That's right. I remember that one.
I have all of that one too because I got it for Christmas like when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But that one's good. It's just you can tell that he hates women when you read it. It's pretty funny.
Okay. Still, it's good to know.
Yeah, the art is so good.
All right, number 5.
Number 5 is FullMetal Alchemist.
What? It's a segue.
FullMetal Alchemist.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm normal about FullMetal Alchemist. Normal with a capital N because I am not normal about FullMetal Alchemist. Yeah.
Yes, the quote normal unquote.
Yeah. It was my first anime and it was my first manga. It was both.
Really?
Yeah.
It was your very first.
It was my very first. I mean, I don't count Pokemon. I was a little kid. That doesn't count.
I feel like that should count, but I'll let it go for that.
Yeah. But like, I wouldn't have gotten into anime just based off of Pokemon. I got into anime because of FullMetal Alchemist, so that's why I count FullMetal Alchemist as
that's fair. Okay, yeah, that's a fair point, because that's the same thing with me. It's like, yeah, I watched Pokemon when I was a kid too, and it's like, yep.
But I wouldn't have been an anime nerd if it wasn't for FullMetal Alchemist.
Fair enough.
Yeah, so like, it was my first anime, and it was my first manga, so it was both.
Really? It was your first manga as well?
Yeah, because I watched the anime. My friend in middle school I was 12 years old. My friend in middle school was like, you have to watch this. And I was
friend.
I was very resistant to it at first because I was like, oh, Japanese cartoons, that's so weird. And I eventually caved because she would not stop talking about it.
It was that good.
And I watched it and I loved it so fucking much.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, I watched all of 2003 and then I was like, oh, the manga's different? So I read the manga and watched Brotherhood. Then, because of that, I had the mistaken assumption that every manga was different from its anime for like a bit. Because I was like 12 and 12-year-olds are stupid.
Well, yeah. If it's the only one that you've seen and read, then that's a reasonable thing. And a lot of them are different.
Yeah, some of them are different. Especially in that era of like the 2010s, a lot of them changed stuff. Studio Bones specifically did that a lot. They did it with Soul Eater, they did it with Noragami, they did it with a bunch of stuff. All of my first anime, most of them were like Studio Bones anime, so I'm like, I know a lot about their older stuff.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And my like opinions about the FullMetal Alchemist anime is that I think that early 2000s Studio Bones has a better looking style than 2010 Studio Bones. So I like the animation of 2003 better than I like the animation in Brotherhood. I'll get into why in a bit, but yeah, FullMetal Alchemist is like the reason I am who I am, to be honest.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
It's a great story, and it just, like, it completely gripped me in every way. I was 12 years old. I did not understand what was going on for, like, it on any, like, deeper level than, like, child claps, magic happens. And also, like,
yes.
when I was a kid, I, like, because I was the same age as Edward Elric when he joins the military. I was 12 years old when I first watched it.
He was 12?
He was 12 when he joined the military, and then most of the story happens when he's 15.
Oh, right. There is, yeah.
There's a time skip.
I forgot about that. And it's not even like this big thing that they talk about.
No, it's just like they have a little title card that says like Big Brother 15, Little Brother 14, and then like it just happens. But yeah, he joins the military when he's 12. So I was 12, and I looked at it and I was like, oh my god, he's such a cool, mature adult. Of course they let him do all these cool, mature adult things. And then now I'm older than him, and he's 15/16 in the series, like for most of the story, and 12 for a good portion of 2003. I look at it and I'm like, who let this baby into the military, and why is no one stopping him? Like, what? Like, it's crazy. The perspective, like, is completely different now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I was younger, I thought he was so annoying. I didn't like him at all. And now that I'm an adult and I watch it again, I'm like, this is a child. Like, he is a child. Like someone take care of him. He's literally a child. I don't think he's annoying anymore because I'm just like, he's a 15-year-old who is, like, in this horrific situation with no one to take care of him or his brother. And he's like going, and he doesn't, like, he doesn't know what to do. He has no idea what he's doing. He's way in over his head and he, like, acts like it. It's great. He's such an interesting character. The Elrics, the siblings of all time. They're such interesting characters, like, both individually and together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And Arakawa is, like, it was written by a woman, which I think adds a lot to the romance, especially. And a lot of the female characters are regarded as some of the best female characters in anime and manga.
Yes.
Specifically Riza Hawkeye, who... when I was younger,
course.
I adored her. I had a huge crush on her when I was younger. I still have a crush on her, honestly. She's great.
Riza Hawkeye is probably one of the best written, quiet, badass female characters that's ever been written.
Exactly, because she just has, like, a lot of the time the quiet, badass female character is, like, that's all there is to her. Like, she's the quiet badass. She has a traumatic backstory, and that's what's going on with her. But, like, Riza is, like, allowed to be funny. She's allowed to have, like, strong dynamics with other characters who are both men and women. She and Mustang have a really fascinating, interesting dynamic going on.
The two of them together.
The two of them together. There's a reason that they're still the most popular ship in FullMetal Alchemist. Like, there's a reason. People love them together. Because they have this, like, complicated, interesting dynamic going on. Despite the fact that he's her commanding officer, they're very much equals in every way within their relationship. Mm-hmm. He trusts her more than he trusts, like, almost anyone else. Probably anyone else.
I would say so, 100%. So yeah, so why don't we talk about that?
Yeah.
Segue!
FullMetal Alchemist. I literally just finished rewatching Brotherhood, like, this morning.
Oh, jeez.
Like, I've been rewatching all of the anime, so I rewatched all of 2003, and then the movie. Okay. And then I rewatched all of Brotherhood, and I literally just watched the last episode this morning.
Wow.
because I've been like watching it as I like do other stuff. It's like my background sounds as I do stuff. Though this rewatch, I was watching it in Japanese, which I have never done before.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
when I was younger, I watched the dub.
This is another series where the dub was actually very well done.
Yeah, the dub was really good, and also it was my first anime. And you know, when you watch something for the first time, and like you probably are gonna watch it in another language.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I'm trying to think of like what my first like actual animes were.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was either Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, or Evangelion.
I've watched all of those, and they all had great dubs.
2 of them were on Cartoon Network.
Yeah. That's crazy!
Yeah, Cowboy Bebop and Trigun were on Cartoon Network.
That is crazy.
Evangelion was not, for
obvious reasons. For obvious reasons.
Some obvious. Some not so obvious until you've watched some of it, and then very obvious reasons.
Yeah. But Cowboy Bebop being on Cartoon Network is kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was Adult Swim.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So it was like in the evening, it was like Saturday nights, but that was one of the animes that they had on there. Cowboy Bebop is weird story.
Oh, but it's
an existence
so good.
Of an anime.
It's crazy.
No, but I mean like meta wise, like Cowboy Bebop, it's not unpopular in Japan, but compared to how it is in the US.
Oh, it's much more popular in the US.
It's so much more popular in America than it was in Japan, but it's so good.
It is.
I've only watched like a quarter of it, and it's still like one of the best anime I've ever seen.
It's amazing. It is really great. I definitely need to like watch it from the start again.
Don't get the manga.
Yeah, don't bother with the manga.
Yeah, I have the full collection right here. It's 5 books. It's 2 completely different series by 2 completely different artists. Yikes. It totals to 5 books.
Trigun as well. I remember really liking the dub for that. Johnny Young Bosch in his first ever role. He became a huge voice actor.
Yep.
He's still around. He's still doing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's in like a lot of video games I like. He was in the Danganronpa dub. That's not relevant. I just really like Danganronpa. He played my favorite character.
Danganronpa. Nudge for something much later on in this episode, but yeah, Danganronpa also really good.
Yeah,
really good series. I don't know if you ever, people out there may not have heard of it. It's pretty popular. It's good.
It's because it's older now. Like the last game came out in like 2017. We're so off topic.
So, if someone's never seen FullMetal Alchemist, how would you describe it to them?
Oh my god.
They know nothing about it.
Oh, that's rough. Okay, FullMetal Alchemist is like, alright. My joking answer would be like, child stages a coup.
I think you're jumping a lot of the... Yeah, I think...
Child stages
I think you're giving a little too much
military coups. Because I just like...
Weirdly enough, slightly better, yes.
Like it's
just saying he did
like,
multiples.
He does stage like... If you count like everyone in both versions of the story, he stages like a total of like 4 or 5 military coups.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy. It's such a... I mean, like the real plot synopsis would be like, 2 kids do something stupid because they're desperate. They want their mother back. They're desperate. Because like any kid would be. They're 2 orphans who just want their mom back, do something stupid, and pay the price. And then the rest of the series is a journey to fix their mistake. That's a pretty like bare bones summary of like what FullMetal Alchemist is about.
That I think is the like, that's your like tagline in.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I would say that's different is it's 2 kids who lost their mom, try to bring her back using alchemy, which is a thing in this world.
Yeah.
It goes horribly wrong, nearly kills both of them, and while they're trying to figure out how to undo the mistakes that they've made,
they stage military coups.
They stage military coups, yes, but they have to, in an attempt to get the power that they need to try and fix their own mistakes, they start stumbling deeper into all the things that are going wrong in their world because of other things that people have done with alchemy.
Yeah.
That is spoilers.
Yeah. I think that's a really
which we may
good
talk
way to
about.
Describe it. Yeah. I do think that it's kind of impossible to talk about what makes FullMetal Alchemist so good without getting into spoilers, especially if you're comparing the 2003 series versus the manga / Brotherhood.
I think there's 2 things that you can tell someone, and tell me what you think on this, but the 2 things that you can think about it is there is a magic system in this world that is complex and gives everyone these crazy powers, but is so well put together that it will always make sense.
It's very like tight. It's a magic system that like can be used in so many creative ways, but at its core it's so simple that it's like it's fantastic. Arakawa is a genius. I say that a lot, but she is.
And it's not a very hard magic system where like everything has to be explained in the story. No, it's just this is how it works. And everything that we'll show you will give you like a 2-sentence description for just why it works. But it'll come down to these 3 rules.
Yeah.
And once we've told you how these 3 rules work with it, every single power will make sense.
Exactly. It's like everything makes perfect sense if you know the core rules. And it's like there's no further explanation than that.
But we'll also make crazy powers like a guy who makes explosions by snapping his fingers.
Exactly, but it makes sense.
With the same rule.
Yeah, it's crazy. It follows every rule.
As like this guy who doesn't exist. He's just a suit of armor.
Exactly.
Those two.
It's the same magic.
Such a good system.
It's just genius, yeah.
And the other thing I would say is the theme of the story is carried through constantly of what are you willing to pay to get what you want, and when is that too far?
I think I agree with you, but I also think that's a little bit more of a theme in the 2003 version of the story than in the manga and Brotherhood.
I think definitely from what I remember from the manga, it does start getting away from that, but that's a big part of the beginning.
Yeah, it's a huge part in the beginning, but as the manga goes on, it kind of, it doesn't lose that necessarily, but they kind of like shift focus away from that, because the manga and Brotherhood kind of focus more on the politics of the world than 2003 does, definitely. Because 2003 does not acknowledge, really, that there are countries outside of Amestris. In Brotherhood, there's, like, characters who show up from other countries and stuff.
Yes, you get all of these other places in this world don't exist until, like, halfway through.
Yeah. They do show up earlier in Brotherhood. Like, Ling, who is the prince of a neighboring country, he's, like, a major player in the story by chapter 20-something, or by episode 20-something. I forget exactly what chapter. But he and Edward have, like, a very strong relationship that, like, is considered to be, like, they're very close friends. Like, I think they're considered to be even best friends a lot of the time. So it's like the characters from, I think it's even canon that Alphonse ends up with the Princess of Shing. Minor spoiler, I guess. The rest of the world is much more of a factor in the manga and Brotherhood, while 2003 just kind of only focuses on Amestris and what's going on there.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would say on that is it is a focus in the manga, but unlike Brother, which I can't speak to having not seen it, and even still, episode 20 is a good chunk into it. It's a ways into it. It's a long way before that sort of comes into it. It's about halfway through?
Yeah.
More than halfway through
it's
when it finally comes
there,
up.
Yeah. Maybe a little less than halfway through, because I think the first Ling chapters are about about chapter 28, I think. Which is, like, the manga is 108 chapters total. So it is, like, a ways into it, but it's not, like...
Oh, that's right. It's a monthly. I forgot.
Yeah, it was a monthly.
I forgot about that. I'm like, wait a minute. It can't possibly be chapter 28. That's, like, book 3. Oh, wait. It's a monthly.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
If you're reading it book to book, they don't show up until a little later.
Yeah, I think, like, book 10 or 11.
Yeah. But I do think that, like, in the overarching plot, they end up playing a huge role. Like, Ling...
They do.
Spoilers, I guess, becomes, like, the host for a homunculus, and it's, like, a huge part of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not even a character in 2003. And Greed is still in the 2003 version of the anime, but he has, like, a completely different arc going on, a completely different story. I think that, yeah, it's interesting.
That's something also to say, is, like, this is definitely the original anime, the 2003, as you call it. That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah.
And this is something we talked about earlier. It ends. It follows along with the manga for a while, and then it starts to drift.
Yeah.
And it's clearly doing that to be like, we're going to have an ending. The manga, and I do believe the manga was still going at the time.
It was at about volume 7, I think. It was at about volume 7, I think, when the original anime was airing. And Arakawa said from the start that she wanted the anime to have a different conclusion. So, she was like, make it up as you go. I think that my biggest problem with the 2003 anime, as much as I love it, I adore it, it's one of my favorite anime of all time.
I would say, as someone who's read half of the manga and watched the whole of the first series, they're both, which is also crazy, they're both totally fantastic, even though they have different stories.
Yeah, they're both fantastic. They're just completely different. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think the biggest problem with 2003 is that it does kind of suffer from the fact that two different people wrote the two halves of it. The first half, even though they technically have the same writer, the first half is, like, pretty religiously follows the manga up until that point.
Yeah.
So the tone is very much the tone that Arakawa wrote into her story. And her tone is, like, despite all these serious things going on, it can be serious when it needs to, but there's also a lot of moments of levity. And it's, like, it's very funny. FullMetal Alchemist is very funny, especially at the start. And Brotherhood and the manga maintained that, like, throughout the entire series. But the 2003 anime, after, like, they branch off from the manga, just kind of loses that completely, and it becomes very somber and like almost bleak and depressing a lot of the time. Which I don't think that's a bad tone. I like Chainsaw Man. I don't think that's a bad tone. But I do think it's like, there's a little bit of tonal whiplash there where it's like, wait, we were like making short jokes about this kid 3 episodes ago, and now like a whole group of people has just been murdered before our eyes, and everyone is like crying about it, and what is happening? It gets very intense very quickly, which again is like not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a little bit of whiplash there.
I agree. I think it's more of the levity went away rather than it was replaced with the darkness, because I mean, the episode with the dog.
Oh, that's fucked up.
Which is gonna be like, let me give you this for anyone who hasn't seen this. I'm not gonna give you spoilers, because for everyone who has seen it, the episode with the dog.
Everyone knows what you're talking about.
Everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about, and we're all like, "Oh God, yeah, I'm gonna go start. I need to go get a drink."
Yeah, that episode is rough. Well, it's like a couple of episodes in 2003, which is the thing. Is that in Brotherhood, they don't bother to adapt a lot of the stuff that's in 2003, which is why I always argue that you should watch both if you're determined to watch the anime for FullMetal Alchemist and not read the manga. My declaration is always you should watch 2003 first. Because Brotherhood assumes that you have watched 2003.
Yes.
Because at the time that Brotherhood was made, 2003 was like one of, if not the most popular anime in the world. It was extremely famous. It was really well regarded. So they're like, of course you've watched 2003. If you're watching a FullMetal Alchemist anime in 2009, of course you've watched 2003. Why would they assume otherwise?
Yeah.
So they just kind of skip over a lot of stuff that's at the beginning of 2003. And I think without that context, without all the added character moments, you just like lose a lot of the impact of things that happen.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And I remember that was something that even when the series was being prepared and released, because I watched 2003 when it was new.
Yeah.
Well, not quite, because it was still America. It was still like 6 to 8 months later. But then they announced Brotherhood, like, they announced it like 3 or 4 years later, and it was like another year or two. But it was like, yeah, we're going to do the rest of the actual manga, but we're not going to cover all of the beginning.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's weird because a lot of the stuff that they adapted in 2003 and is far more relevant to the story in Brotherhood. So it's weird that they just like were like, screw it, we're not doing that. Usewell, like Lieutenant Yoki, the character of Lieutenant Yoki who shows up in one episode in 2003, or maybe 2 episodes, he's like not really much of a player in 2003. He shows up like maybe twice outside of his episode, but in Brotherhood he's like a major character later on. So it's like weird. They just like, because then when he shows up again, he has to like explain who he is to the audience. Like they do like a clip show of his episode of like what would have been his episode, and the brothers are like, we don't remember who you are, and it's like a joke. But it's weird because it's like he's such a relevant character in Brotherhood, and they just like did not animate him before that. It's weird.
Yeah, that's the thing that's weird about this anime to like recommend it is like, yeah, you have to understand the second anime was made and the people making it told you to watch the other anime first.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they weren't going to deal with all of it.
They assume that you have watched the other anime. They're like, you watched 2000. We know you watched 2000. Did you do your homework and watch 2003? Because if you didn't, you're not gonna.
God, I wish that was my homework, because that would have been such good homework. Oh my God.
There's also like character deaths. Like there's one really famous earlier character death that everyone who has watched FullMetal Alchemist will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we all already know exactly what you're talking about.
You know who I'm talking about.
God.
And that character is in Brotherhood. The first time he meets the Elric brothers is when they're already 15 and 14 respectively. Like the first time they meet is like the brothers are 15 and 14 respectively. They meet him like in passing, and he doesn't really like connect with them. They don't really talk to him very much. In 2003, they first meet him when Ed is like 12. He's just joining the military. He hasn't even joined yet when they first meet. The guy like insists that they like stay at his house. They're there when his child is born. Like they help deliver his child. He's like a constant presence. Whenever they're in Central City, he shows up and he's like, oh, hi guys, do you want to come see my wife? Do you want to come stay at my house? He's like a constant presence. He's like popping in and out, and then he dies. They have much more of a relationship with him, so you understand why Edward is so devastated by this happening.
Can't believe I'm saying this, but FullMetal Alchemist is one of those series where it's like, hey, do you want to meet my child? You should always go, no, something terrible is about to happen.
Exactly.
You don't know to who. You don't know how,
Yeah.
but something terrible is gonna happen.
So it's like when it happens, like the commanding officer Mustang is like, we're not gonna tell Edward that this happened because we know that Edward will blame himself and it will destroy him. So I think he says to Hawkeye, he's like, we're not gonna tell Edward that this happened. And then Edward finds out anyway, and it fucking destroys him. He blames himself.
Oh yeah, and it's
like ruins him. He feels horrible about it.
Isn't it like 10 or 12 episodes later too? And
yeah, he doesn't find out about it until like at least 5 episodes after it happens.
Yeah.
And it feels much like a much bigger deal when he finds out, because you're like, you've seen them build this like really in-depth, kind relationship, and then it's like you see how it impacts this child that when it gets ripped away and he thinks it's his fault, and it's fucked up. And then in Brotherhood you like lose that completely because they didn't like animate all the stuff with like him before that. It's like, why would they? It's already in 2003.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that Brotherhood loses, although it sounds like they get it with things later, and that 2003 does so well, and FullMetal Alchemist itself does so well, is the characters and their interaction, and like they feel like people.
They really do feel like
still
people.
Caricatures to some degree. They still have their personality and their types.
They have their archetypes, but like there's more to them than that.
And they feel like people. They have their goals, they have their lives, they have their breaking points. Their emotions and the things that they're going through are the story itself.
They feel like so real. They're wonderful. It's like the whole story is like Ed and Al trying to correct their mistake, and it's like that's the story.
Yeah, that's the plot, but the thing you're watching the story for isn't the plot.
Yeah, it's the characters.
Even though the plot is itself good, but it's the characters and like who they are
Yeah.
and what they're doing and how they live through this plot that is such a huge part of it.
I just, like, my favorite thing about Edward as a protagonist is that he feels like there's so many, like, little things about him that you learn just from watching him do stuff. Like, for the most part, it's never, like, called out. Like, there's, like, he dresses weird. The way he dresses is weird for his world. Because he dresses in, like, this, like, red coat with, like, all leather. He dresses like a scene kid, essentially. It's the equivalent of, like, how a scene kid would dress in modern, like, America is how Edward dresses in Amestris. But no one ever really says that until later when someone makes fun of him for his style. And you're like, oh, it's weird that he dresses like that. And it's like another thing you've learned about this character is that he dresses like an emo kid. And also, like, the way he likes to create weapons, right? He always does it. The weapons he makes with his alchemy are always super gaudy and weird. And it's such a cute, like, 15-year-old kid thing that, like, when he claps his hands and pulls a spear out of the ground, he has to give it an intricate, weird handle for no reason. He's like, no, it has to look cool. He, like, wears his, like, stupid red coat. He wears it into the desert because he's like, he refuses to ditch out his cool red coat.
Yeah.
And it's adorable.
That coat. And
like, later on in Brotherhood, they're going into the final battle, and he's lost his red coat at this point. So he, like, goes out of his way to buy red fabric and alchemy it into a red coat, and then they're like, why would you do that? And he's like, well, if I'm gonna die in style. And it's like, it's so great. He's such a fun character.
Yeah.
And he's got a lot of suffering. He suffers a lot. He goes through a lot of traumatic, horrific shit in both versions of the story. But, like, he's more than his suffering in every way. And it's like, he's such a great character. I love him so much. He's short and everyone makes fun of him for it, but he refuses to drink his milk, and it's adorable. He's so cute. He feels like a real 15-year-old in, like, every way.
It's been so long since I've read it, but, like, thinking, I was a teenager, too, when I was reading it. And it's like, yeah, he was a kid.
Yeah.
Through all of this. And it's just like, yeah, he is. And that's exactly how he comes off. And it's actually a really good depiction of what someone like that would be, but he's also been through a lot, and he has the determination and the personality of someone who's like, well, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah, he
this
has
is what
to
I
keep
want,
going.
and I'm gonna do whatever I have to get there.
Yeah, I think that's another thing that 2003 does better than Brotherhood, in that Edward actually looks like a child for all of 2003. The manga, I think he looks like a child in the manga, but he does not look like a child in the Brotherhood anime. He does not look like a child. He looks like maybe an older teenager, but he does, like, 2003, he's tiny. He's so small. He, like, looks small. The automail on his, like, arm is, like, it looks huge in comparison to him. it like comes out all the way to like his clavicle. It's like, and Alphonse looks like in the armor looks like way bigger next to him than he does in Brotherhood.
Oh god, yeah.
So it's like Edward is like he's small. He's a small person. He's like 4'11" or something. He's canonically very small, and he like
he's very short.
Yeah, he's very short partially because the automail stunts his growth. But in Brotherhood, they also have like another explanation for it. But he's very short, and the 2003 anime like really emphasizes how young he looks, and it's like disturbing in a way. It's like really disturbing.
Yeah.
This like 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15-year-old child like running around the country like with the power of a major in the military.
The power to turn something into something else whenever he wants.
Yeah, and he's like he's a chaos gremlin. Someone says something is against the rules, and they hear the word rules as challenges. Like, and it's funny because people forget that Alphonse is a lot more polite than Edward. Like, Edward will cuss you out, and Alphonse will just stand there smiling sweetly behind him. But like, which
you can't see anyway because he's just a giant suit of armor anyway.
But Alphonse comes off more polite, so he gets away with it more. But like, Alphonse is just as much of a fucking like crazy person as his brother.
He'll do things that like he'll break every single rule.
But with a smile.
When you're sitting in the room with him, he'll be very polite. He'll sit in his chair, sit up straight, put his hands in front of his lap, and he'll wait for you to turn around before he does those things.
It's so funny because he's like, it's funny because you have that dynamic of like Edward is much more vulgar and he's much more like aggressive outwardly, and Alphonse is like so proper and sweet. But then when they talk about each other, Edward is like my perfect sweet little brother who I love and has done nothing wrong ever in his life. And then Alphonse literally at one point, like word for word says, "Oh, I'm taller and more handsome and nicer than my brother who is a loser and gets no bitches and has no friends." And it's like he actually says that out like to another character. He basically says like exactly that. He's like, "Women hate my brother." And it's so funny. It's peak sibling energy.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Like, they love each other. They love each other so much. And Alphonse, like, loves his brother. He can and will and does sacrifice himself for his brother multiple times.
Yep.
But he will also talk shit about Ed so hard. It's so funny.
Oh, that reminds me of something else. Like, talking about Alphonse, and to go into a more technical side of this, the art and the character designs in this, Alphonse is a suit of armor, and he is one of the most expressive characters in this.
Yeah, absolutely.
From like random chibi stuff to the classic like sweat drops and blushes and things, and just the way he moves and acts. Like, it's a freaking giant suit of armor, and you can feel the emotion coming off of Alphonse every time.
Yeah, there's so much personality in him.
Yes.
It's amazing. Like, every character in FullMetal Alchemist has that level of personality, but the fact that like they can give it to a suit of armor and he still is like, you can read every expression he's feeling. Like, he can't move any part of his face except like his eyes a little bit, and you can still like, just from like the way they angle his eyes, you can read everything he's thinking. It's awesome. And also the voice acting performances in both English and Japanese are amazing.
Another thing to say, yes, this is an anime, and the English translation for the manga too are all exceptionally well done.
They're all amazing. I rewatched it in Japanese. That was my, like, the last rewatch I just did was in Japanese. Edward and Alphonse are both voiced by women. They both do a great job at convincing me that they are young boys. I really love especially Edward's voice actress in Japanese because I think she does a great job with the like rougher, like vulgar tone that he always has.
Yeah.
And the voice acting for everyone is great. The guy who voiced Hughes has since passed away, unfortunately, in Japanese.
Okay,
Very sad, but he was fantastic as Hughes as well. Like, everyone was fantastic.
Everyone was fantastic in that series. Everyone did such a good job.
Yeah.
I
still, like, randomly quote, like, lines from the English dub. Like, I was watching Solo Leveling recently. I was watching a dubbed episode because my friend likes the dub. And one of the characters, I was like, I recognize that guy's voice. And I looked it up, and it was the guy who voices Armstrong in the English dub, FullMetal Alchemist. So I started, like, aggressively shouting, like, "This technique has been down in the Armstrong family for generations!" It's such an iconic line.
Armstrong. God, there's just so many characters in this.
They have so much like interesting stuff going on. Even Armstrong has like a whole story. He's such a minor character in relation to like a lot of other characters, but even he has like a whole like inner conflict. He has an arc that he goes through. Like, there's so much going on. His sister in the manga, she's beautiful. We love her.
Oh God, I forgot about his sister. Because this to me is like hitting me as we've been talking about this. I have not read this series for like 10 or 15 years. I have not seen the anime since like 2006. I have not watched any of it. And you're like, oh yeah, you remember Armstrong? And I can immediately think of like 10 things with Armstrong.
Yeah.
He's this minor character. Roy Mustang.
Yeah.
Oh my god, there's so much.
I was like, as I was watching it, I was like shocked by how much of it I remember.
It stands out. Everything's so unique, and like all the characters, you know them so well.
Yeah.
They're so easy to be memorable, and then they are memorable.
Yeah. Even if they barely show up, you're like, oh yeah, okay, this character has had an arc that has happened throughout this series. Like, even if they show up, like, Armstrong's arc is pretty minor in comparison to, like, Ed's or Roy's.
Yeah.
But it's still, like, an arc where you see a moment where he changes and you're like, that's the resolution to the problem that he was having this whole series.
Yeah.
And it's great. She treats her characters with such respect and, like, love, and it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Roy Mustang is such a... is one of the characters of all time.
I have nothing to add to that.
Yeah.
The thing of Roy Mustang that I keep remembering, and I have to keep telling myself, no, that's not Roy, is one of the fights between Ed and one of the homunculus, Envy.
Oh, yeah.
When he's just like, has him on the ground pinning him, and he keeps turning into other people, and he turns into Roy, and he's like, oh, that's definitely not going to make me stop punching you.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Oh, God.
Like, because Ed and Roy's relationship is so compelling from a lot of different angles. A lot of people like to think of them as like a father figure and a son figure, which I think is completely valid, and I actually really do like that dynamic. But I also think that Roy is someone who understands Edward in a way that a lot of other military personnel just wouldn't bother to. Because of that, he knows that Edward is like a naturally aggressive, rebellious person who is not going to submit to authority easily, and he kind of in doing so, he like rides a weird balance where like he's the one who brought this child into the military in the first place, while also he gives Edward the space to like be a rebellious 15-year-old within the military, if that makes sense.
You can absolutely see that. Yeah, he knows he can't order him to do exactly what he wants. You could also look at it the other way of Mustang understands Ed enough that he knows how to sort of get him to do what he wants, where he won't order him to quite do something. He'll order him to do something similar and know that Ed will get upset at it and do something his own way, which is what he wanted anyway.
Yeah. He tries really hard to protect Edward as much as he can, where he doesn't tell Edward about the person who passes away because he wants to protect him. It's like he does what he can to like protect Ed and help him in a way that is like kind of removed a little bit because he doesn't want Ed to catch on, because if Ed catches on, then Ed will not take it. He will reject it.
Yeah.
Especially because Edward has such a, I don't want to say tumultuous because that's not the right word, but he has a really bad relationship with his own father because he just like doesn't have a relationship with his father because his father was never around.
Yeah.
He's very like resistant to male authority figures, and Mustang kind of gives him like the space to be rebellious without being scared of like the military power structure crushing him under it. And I love and respect Mustang for that so much. He's such a great character. One of the characters of all time. He's so interesting.
One of the characters of all time who, that's not all there is to him. There's
absolutely
the amazing relationship with Hawkeye.
Yeah. And his relationship with Hughes, like there's a lot of Mustang's character I think is lost in Brotherhood as well, because they cut out some early scenes between him and Hughes. This is, I wouldn't call this a spoiler, but early in 2003 there's a scene where there's like a flashback, a scene where Roy tried to kill himself like after the Ishbalan War, or like he considered it. He didn't actually try, but he like was about to, and he chickened out, as he puts it. And like I think that scene is like so vital to Roy's characterization that it's kind of fucked up that they cut it from Brotherhood. He kind of is a completely different character without it.
Yeah.
It just like tells you so much about him and his like internal life, and also his relationship with Hughes, that again, like so many character building moments happen in 2003 that they just didn't do in Brotherhood. That's one of them. It's also just a very devastating emotional scene for both of them. And it tells you so much about them and their relationship and why Hughes like follows him. It also tells you why all of Roy's men follow him, because he has this like squad of like very loyal men and one woman who really believe in him. They really want him to succeed specifically. And you get a sense in Brotherhood that he cares about them. Well, obviously he cares about them because he like literally is willing to kill for them.
Yep.
But in 2003 you really see like why they follow Roy specifically, because it's more than just that he cares about them. It's like because they think that he genuinely is a good man and will be a good leader. You see it a lot more. And also 2003 has adapts some of the sillier chapters, which they don't do in Brotherhood. There's a fight between Edward and Roy where they just like go at it. It's like a playful fight that like they do with the whole military watching, and it's like an event to see like who would win, the full metal or the flame.
Oh, yep. I remember
Yeah,
that one now.
and it's like a joke episode where like the whole episode is just like comedy bits and also that fight. I feel like those episodes they're not like plot important, but they do like really build like the characters before you get into the plot. And then you care about them more when the plot actually happens.
Yeah, that's another thing that 2003 did really well. There are like a couple random filler, or there's parts of episode.
Like some anime original episodes.
Yeah, or even if it's not quite that, like half of an episode.
Yeah.
This would have been like one thing in it, so it would have been like a half episode, but they extended it for a full episode.
Yeah.
But it always made the characters be a little bit more, let you see more of them, let watch these scenes play out and these characters be themselves.
Yeah.
So it's always kind of worked out, at least for definitely the first half, maybe like the first 2/3 of that series. Pretty much everything they did was good.
Like most of it, yeah. I think there's a classic scene that like you see everywhere where it's like one of Mustang's men, Fury, I believe, finds the dog that Riza ends up adopting, and he like brings it into the office because he's like he doesn't know what to do with it, and he's like scared that Mustang will be mad about it, and Mustang comes in and he picks up the dog and he's like, a dog, and then it like breaks the tension and he goes, I love dogs. And it's like it's just this like really cute like comedic moment. And then like that episode, like Edward isn't even in that episode, it's just an episode of like Team Mustang like hanging out and doing ridiculous weird shit together, and it's like such character building for these characters that like, and like none of it is like plot relevant, it's just fun. And it's really cute. And I really like that episode. I don't think there's like anything wrong with that.
Yes. No, that's a great part. It is also in the manga.
Yeah.
And it's also got the great part of, again, Riza being amazing of like, oh, the dog's going to pee. And so she disciplined it by like shooting 3 bullets right around it. And it's like standing there with its paws up. It's like,
it's so cute.
Good.
Yeah.
Now don't do that again.
And I think it also like speaks a lot to her character, and that she's allowed to be more than just like the cold badass woman. That in the end, like they're all like talking about who can take the dog. Like, because they want someone to take the dog. Mustang is like, oh, I can't because I live in a studio apartment, which is also hilarious because he's a colonel in the military. He lives in a studio apartment.
Yeah.
But he's like, I can't. I live in a studio apartment, and Riza's like, I'll take the dog. And then she like raises the dog, and she has it for the rest of the series. She has it in Brotherhood as well.
There's that comedic moment of her like disciplining it, but the dog keeps coming back up, and you watch her like take care of it and care for it.
Yeah.
It's not just this one-off moment. The dog comes back.
She has the dog for like the rest of the series, both in Brotherhood and in the manga.
She's taking care of it and treating it with love, being a wonderful pet owner. And it's like, oh, this is cool. Like, that's the whole scene. Watch her like take care of her little puppy. And it's like, oh, I'm so glad about this.
In Brotherhood, at the end, there's like a montage of like photographs of like the characters after the story is over. Even one for the dog where like the dog has puppies. I don't think that counts as a spoiler, but it's cute. The dog lives. This dog.
Yay! Unlike the other dog scene.
2003 is like, it's got so much going for it that when people say like, skip it, don't watch 2003, just watch Brotherhood, I'm like, no, don't listen to that. That's stupid.
Yeah. Well, with that, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Mudai Manga Book Club. If you want to follow us some more, you can find us on Blue Sky at Mudai Manga Book Club or on YouTube at Mudai Manga Book Club. Feel free to drop a like, comment, subscribe, send us an email if you like, also at mudaimangabookclub@gmail.com. Hooray, everything's named the same. We did it. Thank you again, Renata, for coming to join us on short notice. And if people want to reach out to you or anything that you want to share, Renata, for people to check out that you work on or do?
Yeah, I have a Tumblr. You can find my Tumblr at Suzu, SUZU-kun, KUN, and then the number 2 twice. And I have an AO3. You can find it Luna, LUNA, _ moon, MOON, 22.
Fantastic. And because it is our tradition at the end of every episode, what is something that now that we've asked you for your 5 favorite series and like an hour and a half of FullMetal Alchemist, what is something else that you'd like to recommend to everybody?
Oh.
That isn't yours. That isn't mine,
yeah. Okay.
Which has never come up because my brother and I haven't made anything yet.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard. I do watch a lot of very obscure anime because I have just been into anime for so long that I like kind of run out of popular stuff to watch sometimes.
Yeah, to give you a hint, like, this is not, oh, this is something big. Just like, what's something that you like that you just like, hey, you want to know what's cool? This is cool.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be manga, doesn't have to be anime. Just like, what's something cool that you think other people should know about?
Oh, I have to think about that for a second.
Okay. Where did I put mine? Because I definitely thought about this before and I'm not struggling to find it right now. Doot. Oh, yes, no, I remember. Because we talked about Danganronpa. Hey, you should go check out The 100 Line, Last Defense Academy. There's a free demo of it on Steam, too. If you have ever played the Danganronpa series or anything by Spike Chunsoft, this is not from them directly, but one of the designers from it split off to his own company and basically made Danganronpa, the tactical RPG.
Is it by 2Kill Games?
Yes, that's exactly it. The demos just come out. The full game is coming out soon, April 24th of this year. It has the exact same like style and feel of Danganronpa, but it's a tactical RPG game where you're, from what little I've played, because I have not gotten very far in the demo, you are defending against endless not necessarily endless, but waves of enemies with your characters. And then it has that same Danganronpa 2.5D, they called it, where it's the little like cutouts of all the characters on backgrounds. The designs, the voice acting, the story being completely wacky bonkers. If you like Danganronpa, like, here you go. Here's a new one. New world, new setting, new everything. Just fantastic.
My recommendation would be, since I'm thinking about anime at the moment, probably Tengoku Daimakyo, or Heavenly Delusion in English.
Ooh.
There's a manga as well. I haven't read the manga, but I've heard it's amazing. I watched the anime, and it was so crazy good. It blew me away. It's about, like, a post-apocalypse. This girl, or we think she's a girl, this girl, quote-unquote, is hired to escort this boy to heaven, quote-unquote, and the two of them are just wandering around the post-apocalypse trying to find heaven. So they're going around interviewing people, asking them where heaven is, and people tell them different things, so they go to all these different places, and they meet all these different people. It's like The Last of Us. That's a great way to describe it. It's really like The Last of Us. There's monsters that they fight. There's like horror elements to it. There's a lot of really terrifying, horrific stuff that happens in that show. But it's also like very human and empathetic and kind at its core. It's a beautiful story with really great characters. The animation is fantastic. The music is beautiful. It's like everything about it is like perfect. I have no complaints about it. That's my recommendation. No one I know has watched it that I have not recommended it to. So that's my recommendation.
Next week, we will actually be covering Hard Boiled Cop and Dolphin, another great series, volumes 1 and 2, and the first half of 3, just to get through that series, because it's a pretty short series, but oh, it's so good. Thank you very much, everyone. Renata, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And with that, have a good night.